The rain came down like a judgment over Portland that night, heavy, relentless, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon and headlights. Daniel Mercer gripped the steering wheel of his old Subaru, his knuckles white, his eyes burning from exhaustion. It was past midnight on a Thursday, and he'd just left Providence Portland Medical Center after another long vigil at his father's bedside. The windshield wipers beat a monotonous rhythm, barely keeping up with the deluge. Daniel's mind was elsewhere, trapped in the sterile hospital room where his father, William Mercer, lay dying. The doctors had been clear that afternoon. His father's organs were shutting down. 72 years of life, reduced to failing kidneys and a heart that struggled with every beat. Pancreatic cancer had ravaged him over 8 months, and now they were simply waiting. Daniel had sat there for hours, holding his father's cool hand, feeling the papery texture of skin that had once been strong enough to hoist him onto broad shoulders. His mother had finally convinced him to go home, get some rest, come back in the morning. "You need to take care of yourself too," she'd whispered, her own face gaunt with grief. The road stretched empty before him. Southeast Foster Road, a lonely strip cutting through the darkened neighborhoods. Most sensible people were home, sheltered from the storm. Daniel envied them. He felt hollowed out, like all the tears he should have cried had evaporated before they could form, leaving only a desert behind his ribs. That's when his headlights caught something. At first, it looked like a pile of discarded clothes on the shoulder of the road, but as he drew closer, Daniel's breath caught. It was a person, a man, collapsed face down on the wet pavement, rain hammering against his motionless body. Daniel's foot moved to the brake instinctively. His car skidded slightly on the slick road before stopping 20 feet past the figure. For a moment, he sat frozen, hands still on the wheel. Every rational part of his brain screamed warnings. It could be dangerous. It could be a setup. You're exhausted. You need to get home. But his hands were already unbuckling the seatbelt. Daniel threw open the door and ran back through the rain, immediately soaked to the skin. The cold water shocked his system, but he barely noticed. He dropped to his knees beside the man, older, maybe 70, wearing a soaked flannel shirt and jeans. His face was pressed against the asphalt, skin pale in the harsh glare of the streetlight. "Sir, can you hear me?" Daniel's voice was swallowed by the storm. He carefully rolled the man onto his back. The face that turned upward was slack, lips tinged blue. Daniel pressed 2 fingers against the man's neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. No, wait. There, faint and irregular, barely there at all. The man's chest wasn't moving. Daniel's EMT training from 15 years ago surged back, muscle memory overriding panic. He'd been a volunteer firefighter for 3 years in his 20s before life and career pulled him away. His hands moved with remembered precision, head tilt, chin lift, checking the airway. No breathing. "Come on," Daniel muttered, positioning his hands over the man's sternum. "Come on, stay with me." "Go." He began compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. He counted in his head, pushing hard and fast, the way he'd been taught. The rain poured down his face, mixing with the sweat already breaking across his forehead, despite the cold. 30 compressions. Then he tilted the man's head back, pinched his nose and gave 2 rescue breaths. Nothing. Another round. 30 compressions. He could feel the man's ribs flexing under his palms, that sickening give that meant he was doing it right, doing it hard enough. 2 breaths. The man's chest rose and fell mechanically, but only because Daniel was forcing it. "Don't you dare!" Daniel growled through gritted teeth. "Don't you dare die on this road!" His arms were burning now, shoulders screaming, but he didn't stop. Minutes stretched into eternity. The rain was so loud he couldn't hear anything else. Not the distant traffic, not his own ragged breathing, not even the desperate thumping of his own heart. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Daniel was aware that this might be futile, that the man might have been lying here too long, that brain damage might already be irreversible. But he couldn't stop. Something primal and stubborn had taken hold of him. He would not let another person die tonight. Not tonight, when death already felt too close, hovering in that hospital room where his father lay. He didn't know how long he'd been working. 5 minutes. 10. When he finally heard sirens approaching. Someone must have called 911. Daniel didn't stop the compressions until he saw the flashing lights of the ambulance pulling up behind his car. We've got him, a paramedic said, gently pushing Daniel aside. A woman with kind eyes and quick hands took over, her partner already unpacking equipment. Daniel stumbled backward, his legs weak, and watched as they worked with practiced efficiency. They intubated the man, attached monitoring equipment, loaded him onto a gurney. The whole time, Daniel stood in the rain, arms hanging at his sides, watching. You did good, the female paramedic said, as they loaded the stretcher into the ambulance. Really good. You gave him a chance. Will he make it? Daniel's voice sounded strange to his own ears, hoarse, distant. She hesitated. I don't know, but without you, he wouldn't have had any chance at all. Then they were gone, sirens wailing into the night, red lights disappearing into the rain-soaked darkness. Daniel stood alone on the empty road for a long moment. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving him shaking and cold. He walked back to his car on unsteady legs, climbed inside, and just sat there, dripping water all over the seats. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. No change. Get some rest. Love you. Daniel started the engine and drove home through the storm. He didn't tell his wife what had happened when he finally crawled into bed at 2 in the morning. Sarah stirred, asked if his father was okay, and Daniel gave the same answer he'd been giving for weeks. No change. It was easier than explaining. Easier than trying to articulate the weight of that stranger's life in his hands, the rhythm of compressions still echoing in his muscle memory. He fell into an exhausted, dreamless sleep, the sound of rain against the windows following him down into darkness. Morning light filtered weakly through the bedroom curtains, grey and uncertain. Daniel woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of his wife moving around downstairs. His body ached everywhere, shoulders, arms, lower back. For a confused moment he couldn't remember why. Then it came back, the rain, the road, the stranger's blue-tinged lips. He groaned and sat up, checking his phone. 7:30. His mother had texted again at 6. Coming to the hospital. Your father had a stable night. Stable. That word had come to mean still dying, just slowly. Daniel showered, feeling the hot water work at the knots in his shoulders. In the mirror, his eyes looked hollow, ringed with dark circles. He was 38, but felt ancient. The past 8 months had aged everyone in his family. Watching William Mercer waste away had carved lines into all their faces. Sarah had breakfast waiting, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. She studied his face across the table with the quiet concern of someone who knew when not to push. You look exhausted, she said gently. I am. Daniel sipped his coffee, grateful for the warmth. I'll probably just spend a few hours with him this morning, then come back. You don't need to come today. You were there all day yesterday. Sarah reached across and squeezed his hand. Whatever you need. The drive to Providence Portland Medical Center took 30 minutes in Friday morning traffic. The rain had passed, leaving the city washed clean and glistening. Daniel parked in the familiar spot in the garage. He'd been coming here so often they should give him a reserved space, he thought darkly. The oncology floor always smelled the same. Antiseptic and cafeteria food and something else, something he'd come to associate with suffering. He nodded at the nurses he recognized, made his way down the corridor to room 412. His mother, Catherine, was sitting in the chair beside the bed, her hand resting on the blanket near his father's arm. She looked up when Daniel entered, and something in her expression made him freeze. She was smiling. Not the tight, brave smile she'd been wearing like armor for months. A real smile, tremulous and disbelieving and lit with something that looked like hope. "Danny," she whispered. "Danny, look!" Daniel's eyes went to the bed. For a moment his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. His father was awake, not just awake, sitting partially upright, the head of the bed raised. His eyes were open, clear, tracking to Daniel's face. The oxygen mask that had been constant for weeks was gone, replaced by a simple nasal cannula. And most impossibly of all, his father raised one trembling hand in greeting. "Danny," his father said. The voice was weak, scraped raw, but it was there. Words. His father was speaking. Daniel felt the room tilt. He grabbed the doorframe for support. What? He couldn't form a complete sentence. "Mom, what happened?" Catherine's eyes were shining with tears. "He woke up about an hour ago." "Really woke up, Danny. Dr. Morrison was just here. She said his vitals are better than they've been in weeks. His kidney function improved overnight. His oxygen saturation is better. She said she's never seen anything like it." Daniel moved to the bedside as if walking through water. Everything felt surreal, dreamlike. His father's eyes followed him, tired but present in a way they hadn't been for days. "Dad," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "Hey, son." William Mercer's hand found Daniel's and gripped it with surprising strength. Heard you've been keeping vigil." "We all have been." Daniel was gripping back, afraid that if he let go, this moment would evaporate like morning fog. "Dad, the doctors said, I know what they said." A ghost of his father's old smile flickered across the gaunt face. "Guess I'm stubborn." Dr. Morrison, a small woman with grey-streaked hair and kind eyes that had delivered too much bad news, appeared in the doorway. She looked almost shaken. "Mr. Mercer," she said, nodding to Daniel, "I was just coming back to check on your father." "What happened?" Daniel asked. "Yesterday you said—" "I know what I said." Dr. Morrison moved to check the monitors, her professional mask firmly in place, but Daniel could see the confusion beneath it. "And I stand by that assessment based on the data we had. Your father's organ function was declining steadily, but sometime in the early morning hours, something changed. His kidney function improved significantly, his heart rate stabilized, his oxygen needs decreased. Frankly, I don't have a medical explanation." "A miracle," Catherine said softly. Dr. Morrison was too careful to use that word. "An unexpected improvement. We'll need to run more tests. Monitor him closely. I don't want to give false hope. His cancer is still terminal, but this reprieve, it's extraordinary." Daniel stood there, his father's hand still in his, and felt something shift inside his chest. Last night came back to him in vivid detail. The stranger's weight, the rhythm of compressions, the rain hammering down, the decision to stop, to help, when every exhausted part of him had wanted to just drive home. He'd saved a life last night. He'd held a stranger's heart in his hands and refused to let it stop. And this morning, his own father's heart was beating stronger than it had in weeks. Daniel didn't believe in magic. He didn't believe in cosmic exchanges or divine intervention. He was a practical man, an engineer who dealt in specifications and tolerances, in measurable, quantifiable reality. But standing there, feeling his father's pulse steady and strong beneath his fingers, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had woven those two moments together. Not causation, he wasn't that foolish, but synchronicity, connection. As if the universe had been watching when he'd knelt in the rain and decided that one life was worth fighting for, and had whispered back, "Here then, here's another chance." "Danny?" His father's voice pulled him back. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel managed a laugh that was half sob. "Yeah, Dad, I'm okay. I'm better than okay." He stayed for hours, watching his father drift in and out of lucid wakefulness, each word a gift. His sister Karen arrived at noon, collapsing in tears of joy at the bedside. His brother Michael drove in from Salem, arriving by early afternoon. The room filled with family, with cautious hope, with the sound of William Mercer's weak but present voice joining the conversation. And through it all, Daniel found himself thinking about a stranger whose name he didn't know, lying in some other hospital room in this same city. He wondered if that man had opened his eyes this morning too. if someone was sitting at his bedside, experiencing their own impossible relief. The thread between those moments felt real and gossamer thin at the same time, something he couldn't touch, but could feel, like the first hint of warmth in spring air. The weekend passed in a strange suspension of time. William Mercer remained stable, weak, sleeping often, but present in a way that defied every prediction. The medical team ran tests, adjusted medications, and offered cautiously optimistic assessments while refusing to declare any kind of recovery. Terminal is still terminal, Dr. Morrison reminded them gently on Saturday afternoon, but quality of life can improve. This time you're getting, treat it as a gift. Daniel took those words seriously. He spent hours at his father's bedside, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. They spoke about small things and large things, memories from Daniel's childhood, regrets about time not spent together during the busy years, hopes for Karen's kids, William's grandchildren who were growing up fast. "I'm proud of you, Danny," his father said on Sunday evening, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Always have been. You know that, right?" Daniel nodded, throat tight. "I know, Dad." But even as he soaked in these precious moments, another awareness gnawed at him. He didn't know what had happened to the stranger from the storm. It started as a nagging curiosity and grew into something more pressing. By Monday morning, back at his desk at the architectural firm where he worked, Daniel found himself unable to concentrate on blueprints and specifications. His mind kept returning to that rain-soaked road, to the desperate rhythm of CPR, to the paramedics' uncertain words, "I don't know if he'll make it." On his lunch break, Daniel called Providence Portland Medical Center. "I'm trying to find out about a patient," he told the woman in the emergency department. "An older man, probably in his 70s, brought in by ambulance Thursday night around 12:30. He collapsed on Southeast Foster Road." "Are you family?" the woman asked. "No, I was the one who found him. I performed CPR until the paramedics arrived." "I see." Her voice softened. "Hold on, let me see what I can find." The hold music was an insult, some cheerful instrumental that felt obscene given the context. Daniel waited, his coffee growing cold beside him. "Sir?" The woman came back. "I can't give you specific information due to privacy laws, but I can confirm that a patient matching that description was admitted to our ICU. He's currently listed in serious but stable condition." Relief flooded through Daniel, followed immediately by a need to know more. "Is there any way I could I visit? Or leave a message? I'll transfer you to the ICU nursing station. They can tell you about visiting policies." Another wait, another transfer. Finally, a nurse named Patricia answered. "The man you're asking about, James Holbrook, is still in intensive care," Patricia told him. "He regained consciousness Friday evening. He's intubated so he can't speak, but he's responsive. Are you family?" "No," Daniel said again. I'm the one who stopped that night." There was a pause, and when Patricia spoke again, her voice held a warmth that hadn't been there before. "He doesn't have any family here. His emergency contact is a neighbor who's elderly herself. I'm sure it would mean a great deal to him to know someone cared enough to check on him. ICU visiting hours are limited, but if you want to stop by, I can make sure you're allowed in." Daniel found himself agreeing before he'd consciously made the decision. "I'll come by after work. Around 6? I'll let the charge nurse know to expect you." The rest of the workday crawled by. Daniel made mistakes on a residential design he was working on. Small ones, but enough that his colleague Tomas noticed. "You okay, man?" Tomas asked. "You seem distracted." "Family stuff," Daniel said, which was true enough. At 5:30, he packed up and drove to the hospital. The ICU was on the 4th floor, a hushed domain of beeping monitors and whispered conversations. Patricia turned out to be a woman in her 50s with warm brown eyes and the competent air of someone who'd seen everything. "You're Daniel?" she asked, and when he nodded, she smiled. "Mr. Holbrook's in room 14. Let me take you." She led him down a corridor lined with glass-fronted rooms, each containing a patient tethered to various machines and monitors. Room 14 was at the end. Through the glass, Daniel could see him, the stranger from the road. In the hospital bed, cleaned up and surrounded by medical equipment, he looked different, smaller somehow, more fragile. But it was definitely the same man. Silver hair, deeply lined face, the flannel shirt now replaced by a hospital gown. "He's been awake more today," Patricia said quietly. "The doctor thinks they might be able to remove the breathing tube tomorrow if he continues improving. He's a fighter." Daniel stepped into the room. James Holbrook's eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling with the mechanical assistance of the ventilator. Daniel stood awkwardly by the door, suddenly unsure why he'd come. Then James's eyes opened. They were blue, sharp, despite the exhaustion and medication. They focused on Daniel with clear curiosity. "Mr. Holbrook," Daniel said softly, "I'm Daniel Mercer. I'm the one who... I found you on the road Thursday night." Something shifted in those blue eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Gratitude, certainly. James tried to lift his hand, managed only a small movement, but his gaze held Daniel's with startling intensity. "I just wanted to..." Daniel stopped, not sure what he wanted. To check if the man was alive, to see proof that his actions had mattered, to understand the strange synchronicity that had been haunting him. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." James blinked slowly, deliberately. His right hand moved slightly on the blanket, and Daniel understood he was trying to communicate. Daniel stepped closer, and James's fingers found his wrist, gripped with surprising strength. Patricia appeared in the doorway. "He's very aware," she said. "We gave him a notepad earlier, but he's still too weak to write much, but he's definitely in there." Daniel looked down at the hand on his wrist, at the pale fingers that had been blue and lifeless 3 nights ago. He thought about his own father, 3 floors up in this same building, also defying expectations. 2 old men, both given unexpected chances to continue their stories. "I'm glad you're still here," Daniel said simply. "I'm really glad." James's grip tightened, then released. His eyes closed again, but a small smile touched the corners of his mouth. Daniel stayed for 10 more minutes, then quietly left. As he walked back through the ICU, he felt something settle inside him. Not answers exactly, but a sense of rightness. He'd needed to know, needed to close that loop, to see that the desperate work in the rain had meant something concrete and real. Outside the hospital, the evening was cool and clear. Portland spread out below, lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. Daniel stood in the parking garage for a moment, breathing in the clean air, feeling the ache in his shoulders from Thursday night's CPR. A good ache, an earned one. He drove to Providence to see his father, found him awake and eating actual food for the first time in days, just soup and crackers, but seeing William Mercer feed himself was like witnessing resurrection. "You're glowing," his father observed. "Something good happen?" Daniel sat down in the familiar chair. "Yeah, Dad, something good happened." He told the story then, for the first time. The rain, the stranger, the CPR, the uncertainty, and then his father's impossible improvement the next morning. He laid it out carefully, not claiming causation, not suggesting magic, but acknowledging the strange beauty of the timing. His father listened quietly, his eyes never leaving Daniel's face. "You know what I think?" William said when Daniel finished. "I think the world works in ways we don't always understand, and I think you're the kind of man who stops when someone needs help. That's not luck, Danny. That's character, and maybe character like that sets things in motion we can't see." "I don't believe in miracles, Dad. Neither do I, necessarily." His father smiled. "But I believe in moments, in choices. In the possibility that doing one right thing can ripple out further than we know. You gave that man a chance. However it works, whatever the mechanism, you gave someone a chance they wouldn't have had. And I'm here, getting chances I shouldn't have. Can we just sit with that, without needing to explain it?" Daniel found himself nodding, something tight in his chest finally loosening. "Yeah, We can sit with it." They sat in comfortable silence as the evening deepened outside the window, two men contemplating the mysterious grace of unexpected time. 10 days later, on a Thursday afternoon bright with October sunshine, Daniel returned to the hospital to visit James Holbrook. The breathing tube had been removed, James had been transferred out of ICU, and according to Patricia, who'd called Daniel with updates, he was asking to see the man who saved me. Daniel brought coffee from the good place on Hawthorne, figuring hospital coffee was probably terrible, even if you could breathe on your own. He found James in room 512, sitting up in bed, oxygen cannula in his nose, but looking remarkably improved. The blue-grey pallor had been replaced by something closer to healthy color. "Mr. Holbrook," Daniel said from the doorway. "Mind if I come in?" James's face lit up. "Please." "And it's James." His voice was rough but functional. "I've been hoping you'd come back." Daniel settled into the visitor chair, handed over one of the coffees. "Wasn't sure if you were allowed this." "They haven't said I can't." James wrapped both hands around the cup like it was precious. "Thank you. And thank you for everything. They told me what you did, how long you worked on me before the ambulance came. Anyone would have done the same. But not everyone did," James said quietly. "Only you. You stopped in the rain on a deserted road for a stranger. That's not nothing, Daniel." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, sipping coffee. "Can I ask what happened?" Daniel said finally. "How you ended up on that road?" James sighed. "Heart arrhythmia. I've had some issues, but I was managing it, or I thought I was. I was walking home from the bus stop that night. I live about a half-mile from where you found me. I started feeling dizzy, chest pain, and the next thing I remember is waking up here intubated with no idea how I got here. They told me about you, about the CPR, about how you didn't leave until the ambulance came. I'm just glad you're okay." "More than okay." James's eyes were bright. "They've got me on new medications, better monitoring. I'm going into cardiac rehab. My doctor says if I'd had that episode at home, alone, I wouldn't have made it. You gave me a second chance at this whole thing." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I'm glad I was there." "I need to ask you something," James said. "And maybe it's a strange question, but why? Not why did you stop, but why did you keep going? Most people would have called 911 and waited, but you worked on me, kept my heart beating with your own hands. Why?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at Portland's skyline. "My father's dying," he said finally. 3 floors up, actually, in this same hospital, pancreatic cancer. That night I'd just left his bedside. The doctors had told us he probably had days left. "I'm so sorry. The thing is," Daniel turned back to James, "the next morning my father woke up. Really woke up. For the first time in days. His vitals improved, his kidney function got better, everything the doctors said wouldn't happen, happened. They call it unexpected improvement. My mother calls it a miracle." James was watching him intently. "And I keep thinking about the timing," Daniel continued. "How I stopped for you at the exact moment I did. How I fought to keep you alive when I'd just spent hours watching my father die by inches. How the next morning he came back to us. And I don't believe in magic or cosmic trades or any of that. But I can't shake the feeling that those moments are connected somehow." "Synchronicity," James said softly. "Maybe. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe making one choice, one good choice, changes something in you, opens something up, and that change ripples out in ways you can't predict." James nodded slowly. "How's your father now?" "Still terminal. Still dying. Just slower. But we've gotten 2 extra weeks with him so far. 2 weeks of conversations we wouldn't have had. 2 weeks of him being present, being himself. And that's everything." "I'd like to meet him," James said, "if that would be okay. If he's up for visitors." Daniel found himself smiling. "I think he'd like that." They arranged it for the next day. James, newly mobile with a walker, made the journey to the oncology floor with Daniel's assistance. William Mercer, propped up in his bed with good color in his face and sharp awareness in his eyes, greeted them with genuine warmth. "So you're the man my son saved," William said, extending his hand. "And you're the man whose son saved me," James replied, shaking it carefully. They talked for an hour, three men who'd each faced death recently and found themselves unexpectedly still here. William told stories from his younger days as a contractor, building half the houses in the Eastmoreland neighborhood. James shared about his career as a librarian, his late wife, who'd passed 5 years earlier, his daughter who lived in Seattle and was coming down to help him recover. Daniel sat quietly, listening to two men who'd been given unexpected time making the most of it. He thought about the stranger on the road, about the split-second decision to stop, about the rain and the compressions and the uncertain outcome. He thought about how easily he could have driven past, justified it with exhaustion and worry, and the reasonable argument that someone else would help, but he hadn't driven past. And because of that choice, James Holbrook was sitting here, making his father laugh with a story about a patron who'd tried to check out the library's ficus plant. When James finally tired and needed to return to his room, William caught Daniel's hand. "That's a good thing you did, son," he said quietly. "A really good thing." "I know, Dad." "No, I mean—" William's eyes were serious. "You gave him time. However much he gets, you gave him that. Same way you've given our family these weeks with me. That's not small, Danny. That's everything." Daniel felt the sting of tears but didn't bother hiding them. "I just want you to stay, Dad. I want you to keep getting better." "I know, but whenever this ends, next week or next month or however long we get, it's been enough. Because of you. Because you're the kind of man who stops in the rain." William squeezed his hand. "Promise me you'll remember that. Remember that your choices matter. That one good act can echo further than you'll ever see. I promise." 3 weeks later, on a grey November morning, William Mercer passed away peacefully in his sleep. His family surrounded him, Catherine, Daniel, Karen and Michael, all holding some part of him as his breath slowed and finally stopped. The grief was immense and terrible and expected, but woven through it was gratitude for the extra time they'd been given, the conversations they'd had, the gentle way his father had been able to say goodbye. At the funeral, Daniel gave the eulogy. He spoke about his father's life, his values, his love for his family. And he told the story of the storm and the stranger, of the mysterious synchronicity that had given them all a few more precious weeks. "My father taught me that character is what you do when no one's watching," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the crowded chapel. "It's the choice to stop on a dark road in the rain. It's the decision to keep fighting when the outcome's uncertain. And it's the faith, quiet and tender and unproven, that our actions matter more than we can see." In the back of the chapel, James Holbrook sat with his daughter, his walker folded beside the pew. His eyes were wet, but he was smiling. After the service, James approached Daniel. "Your father was a good man," he said. "I'm honored I got to meet him." "Because of you, he got to be himself again, at the end," Daniel replied. "However it worked, whatever the connection, we both got something we needed that night." "Not magic," James said. "No, not magic." Daniel looked around at his family, at the friends who'd gathered to remember his father, at the life that continued even in the midst of loss. Just one good act, echoing out. Just the possibility that when we choose compassion, something shifts, something opens up. James nodded. "I'm going to live differently, Daniel. Whatever time I have left, I'm going to make it count. That's what you gave me, the chance to do it right. That's all any of us can do," Daniel said. "Make it count." At Burdet they shook hands, then embraced, two men bound by rain and chance and the mysterious grace of being in the right place at the right moment. As Daniel drove home that evening, the Portland sky clearing to reveal stars, he felt his father's presence, not in any supernatural way, but in the lessons that remained, the values that persisted, the love that didn't end just because breath did. He thought about James Holbrook, alive and recovering. He thought about the compressions in the rain, the rhythm that had kept a stranger's heart beating until help arrived. He thought about his father, waking up that impossible morning, lucid and present, and given one more chance to say what needed saying. And for the first time since his father's diagnosis, Daniel felt something other than grief. He felt purpose. He felt the weight and beauty of being someone who stops, who helps, who chooses compassion even when exhausted and afraid. It wasn't magic. It wasn't even a miracle, not really. It was simpler and more profound than that. It was the quiet faith that our actions matter, that one good choice can ripple out in ways we'll never fully see, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the world whispers back, "You stopped in the rain. Here then, here's what one life can mean." And that was enough.